The Bills exact their revenge against the Kansas City Chiefs based off of the playoff game that they had last year in the divisional round. And the Bills win this game by the score of 24-20. They go on the road to Arrowhead Stadium and knock off the Kansas City Chiefs. This was a very competitive game. There's no other way to say it. I thought the game would be a little bit more high scoring just because I didn't have a lot of faith that either defense was really going to be able to contain the quarterbacks and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. But I will say, I got to give credit where credit is due. I thought both defenses really kind of stepped up to the plate here and made their impact in just stalling out drives or, forcing those teams to punt. And when I look at how the game actually played itself out, KC was actually in the driver's seat for most of this game. I will say that, towards the end of the first half, the Bills connecting with Gabriel Davis with about 10 to 15 seconds left in the second quarter, that was absolutely huge. If I remember correctly, going into halftime, the game was tied, and it was in large part due to that touchdown that Josh threw to Gabriel Davis. And I know if you're KC fans, you're probably just sick and tired of hearing Gabriel Davis's name. But the guy just continues to produce against KC. He's able to find some sort of separation, and he's able to make the most of it. But not only that, I thought Stephon Diggs had one of the best games that he's had all year. He had 10 catches, almost 150 yards receiving, and had a touchdown to go on top of that. So, when I look at both offenses with KC and Buffalo, they were able to move down the field pretty effectively. But I will say that, both defenses did step up. And like I said, this game I thought was going to be in the high 30s for both teams as far as what the scoring was going to be. Didn't happen here. So this was a lot closer of a contest with the score only being 24-20. But I got to say, Josh Allen and that offense, when they needed a drive to go ahead in that game in the fourth quarter, they were able to do it. And when I look at Patrick Mahomes had some time at the end of the game to lead the Chiefs on a game-winning drive. He bounces outside of the pocket, throws it across his body, and he ends up getting picked off. That essentially seals the game. When I look at Pat, Pat's made those types of throws throughout his entire career, and he's been largely successful at doing that. But in this case, the Bills were ready for the challenge, and they just bit on the route, and they jumped it and got the interception, which essentially sealed the game. Now, when I look at the significance of this game with both teams, I mean, look, we're in week 6, so we're about halfway through October, and I would say that both teams, respectively speaking, are still at the top of the AFC. And this game, lived up to the expectations of being a really competitive battle. It's just, when Kevin and I were discussing this game last week, we did pick the Bills to win this game, and we had it around a possession or so for the margin of victory for Buffalo, and that's how it kind of played out in this one. But I mean, as far as both teams are concerned, I'm not really worried about, one team, really going on this huge upward trajectory and another team going on the slide. The Chiefs are going to be just fine. They're sitting on a 4-2 record. They're sitting at the top of the AFC West still, just because when you look at the rest of the AFC West landscape, it's competitive, but you could tell that KC is still head and shoulders above the Chargers, the Broncos, and the Raiders. And in some cases, if you're going to compare KC to the Raiders, for example, even though that their record doesn't indicate it, I will say that, the Raiders are right there, but they just can't figure ways to beat KC. And when I look at the Chargers, I think the Chargers are probably the only team that could really kind of go toe-to-toe with KC in that division. But we'll kind of see how things transpire going later into the year. But as far as the Bills are concerned, I think the Bills are the best team in the NFL right now. I think they've earned it at this point. Outside of the one game where they dropped one in Miami, and when I look back to that game, heat definitely played a factor because guys were just dropping like flies because, I mean, it was like 95 degrees that day. And on the field, it was around 105 degrees on the turf. So you could tell guys were just struggling in that game just to stay hydrated, and they were cramping up the entire game. But, based off of the conditions that they're going to be moving into as, it essentially gets colder when we go into November and December, I think Buffalo is primed for a really good run here. I think when you look at Josh Allen, he's probably at the top of the MVP discussion right alongside Patrick Mahomes. I will say that I think Patrick probably did take a step back in the MVP leaderboard based off of this game, but not to the point where, he shouldn't even be in the running anymore. He's going to be essentially in those top 2, top 3 spots. But I think just basing the performance that we saw from Josh yesterday, I thought Josh was spectacular. He had over 300 yards passing, had 3 touchdowns. I mean, it's a phenomenal performance as far as I'm concerned. And moving forward, I think the Bills are in the driver's seat. I think the Bills are probably the best team in the league. I understand that the Eagles have a better record than them, but after what I saw from the Eagles last night, and we'll get into the Eagles game in a little bit later, I think the Bills have it right now. They have pretty much one of the most prolific offenses that you'll see in the NFL. Their defense has been playing up to snuff the last couple of weeks. And to be able to hold KC to only 20 points, with Buffalo going on the road and doing that, that was impressive as far as I'm concerned. And if they could be able to maintain that moving forward for the next couple weeks, for the next couple months, not only do I think that they're going to be the best team in the AFC, they're probably going to be the best team in the NFL just because, they were essentially our Super Bowl pick. And so far, sitting at a 5-1 record, having the second best record in the NFL behind the Eagles, that's a good start for them. So we'll keep our eye on both teams. Like I said, I think KC's going to be fine. I think the Bills are in the driver's seat. So it's not like I could walk away from this game saying the Chiefs are going to take a major step back from this game. That is not the case here. You got Patrick Mahomes. You've got a defense that plays decent in spurts. I think they'll be just fine. But overall, I thought this was a great game. It lived up to the expectations. And I wouldn't be surprised if both of these teams end up running it back at some point in the playoffs, probably sometime in January. Could be in the divisional round, could be in the championship game. We'll see what happens. But it seems like to me like both of these teams are probably on a collision course in the playoffs when we get to that period of time. But great game. And, we'll just kind of leave that game for where it's at.